Social media breakfast at Dream Bank. We are super happy to have you here. If you do not know us, we are a local nonprofit. Our focus is on education and networking, and it's our goal essentially to ensure that the greater Madison area community is at the cutting edge of what's going on in the digital marketing space. As everybody knows, digital marketing is changing constantly, so we try to bring in speakers and panels and put out all kinds of information to help make sure that the folks in this community are staying on top of an ever-changing field. This is our board. We are a completely volunteer-driven organization. There's a big hole here, and it's waiting for you. So if you are interested in joining our board, you should absolutely do that. We are on all the social channels for the most part. You can connect with us with our name and with our hashtag SMBMad, Social Media Breakfast Madison. Simple. One of the many ways that we try to help ensure that the community stays at the cutting edge of what's going on in digital marketing is through scholarships. If there is a class you want to take, a certification you want to get, a conference you want to attend, we want to help send you there. You can apply for scholarships at smbmad.org/scholarships. This is one of our good friends of the org who went to a conference that we helped pay for, and she then wrote a blog post about it to ensure that everybody could learn from her experience. Next month, we are going to be joined by Greg Michio. Anybody know Greg? He's spoken to us a couple times, longtime friend of the org. He's going to be talking about using LinkedIn to grow your org. And we're very excited. Steph Shanks, if anybody was here in April, was doing free LinkedIn headshots in the back. Anybody get a headshot from Steph? Okay, well, good opportunity for y'all to come do it because she's going to be doing that next month with our LinkedIn presentation. We thought it was a nice tie-in for her to come back, so we're super excited to have that, and Greg's going to be awesome. He always is. You want to get involved with Social Media Breakfast? We're always looking for speakers, volunteers, nonprofits to spotlight, and we are definitely looking for food sponsors, so if you work with an org that has anything to do with food, we'd love to partner with you on that. So you can find info on all that and get in touch with us at smbmad.org. Raise your hand if you're in our Facebook group. Okay, Social Media Madison Masterminds. It's where the conversation continues when the events end. I just checked yesterday, there's over 1,000 people in that group. There's an awesome opportunity to connect with other marketers and people interested in social media in the Madison area. So if you are not already a member, head to Facebook today and search for Social Media Madison Masterminds and join us. We are a volunteer-driven org, but we do not exist without our sponsors, so a huge shout-out to all of these fine folks. And with that, I'd like to call up our good friend Andy from Dream Bank to tell you about this amazing space we're currently sitting in. You gotta use both of them.
Double mic. All right, good morning, everyone. Thank you so much for, I did this last week, or month, didn't I? Hi, online audience. Good morning. My name is Andy. I work here at Dream Bank. So excited to continue to be a part of this and have you all join us on this lovely June Wednesday morning. A little bit about what we do and why we exist. So Dream Bank is a free community resource that is put on by American Family Insurance, and everything we do here ladders up towards the inspiration and pursuit of dreams, in large part by helping to remove barriers for individuals. There's a couple ways that we deliver on that promise, the largest one being the events that we host. So we host 15 to 30 free events a month, anything ranging from small business and entrepreneurial workshops to inspirational, motivational wellness speaker series. We have events in Spanish, family-related activities, learning lab, which is kind of like a how-to or a 101 series. So really trying to cast a very wide net and appeal to as many different dreamers as possible because there's a lot of different people and a lot of different dreams out there. One of the things that I really wanted to highlight, though, is something that we're very, very proud about, is this first-time home buyers self-guided course. So I put a bunch of these postcards out today. This is a really concise course that highlights the home buying process, everything from how to save for a home all the way to what to expect within those first couple weeks. It's a self-led course, evergreen, it's free of charge as well, so just go ahead and take a picture of the QR code on there and it'll bring you to the registration page. But would love any sort of feedback, would appreciate you sharing this with folks that may be starting or in the throes of that home buying process, but again, we're really excited about this and sharing it with the community. In addition to that, I want to draw your attention to the space all the way back. So Here at Dream Bank, we always have a very robust and interactive exhibit on site. They're always rooted in positive psychology, meant to embody some of the beliefs and values of the company. So this one is actually themed Building Your Dream. And it's a really introspective exhibit that walks you through that dream process. What am I good at? How do I want to spend my time? What does the world need? All the way to, kind of building that out and scaling it as well, if you want to. It's going away in the tail end of June, and we're getting our new exhibit in as well. So this may be one of the last opportunities you all get a chance to look at that, but really want to draw your attention to that just because it is a very robust exhibit as well. With that being said, I will go ahead and kick it back to Josh.
If y'all don't know, there's some chairs and couches in that back room alone that are worth the trip, in my personal opinion. They're very comfortable chairs and couches. And also, if you have not taken a full tour of this space, you're missing out. Hang out after this session, because there's a whole lot of really cool things going on. And like Andy said, they change all the time. So big shout out to Dream Bank for being a longtime friend, partner, and host of Social Media Breakfast. So one of the many ways that we try to give back as a nonprofit, which was actually started by one of our good, our favorite past board members here, Hannah, was our nonprofit spotlight. Every month we like to shout out a fellow nonprofit who's doing great work in the community. And this month, hopefully you had a chance to speak with Tracy in the back, we are highlighting Big Brothers Big Sisters of Dane County. Their team of professionals strive to meet the needs of individual needs. They're bringing resources to help empower the next generation. So if you want to learn more about them, check them out on their site. You can find all of their social channels here. I stepped on the thing and we are down. I can keep talking, but yeah, so it's BBBB. A lot of B's, S Dane County. Thank you. Are we live? No? Andy, any ideas? Big Brothers, Big Sisters, Dane County. If you Google them, you can't miss them. They're around. With that, we're about to... Okay, cool. Yeah, Big Brothers, Big Sisters of Dane County. Very cool org. Super excited to have them here. So I'm going to introduce Nick in 1 second. I just want to say real quick. First of all, does anybody here know Nick? Has anybody here seen him speak? So Nick helped us as an organization not just take our sessions live back pre-pandemic, he also helped us transition into the pandemic. And if I would argue he was as important as anybody else involved in our org at helping us weather the pandemic. While we didn't get the opportunity to stay with him throughout the entire time and we had to slum it on Zoom at the end of the pandemic, Nick really helped us as a visionary make that transition. So just big ol' SMB Matt, thank you, because I really think you helped to move this org forward and like keep us going through a really dark time. He was one of our first speakers during the pandemic while also running the board, and then helped us set a tone and figure out how to do it. So what he did for us, I'm excited for him now to teach you how to do for you. So with that, I'm going to pass it along. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Josh. Really appreciate that. And I am definitely excited to be back here at Dream Bank, and really excited to be back with Social Media Breakfast. It was a lot of fun. I really enjoyed this organization, so I'm glad to be back here today. For those of you online, be sure to let us know where you're watching from. Just leave a comment in the chat, let us know. As Josh said, my name is Nick Palkowski, and I am, my full-time gig is as a virtual event production manager at the Credit Union National Association, which essentially means I get to spend all day, every day in some aspect of video production. A lot of times that means recording in studios or being live in the studio, or it also means traveling to different conferences and events and bringing people to those events who can't be in that location. So I'll travel to Phoenix and we'll create hybrid events and experiences for people in person and people virtually. I also spend a lot of time as a freelancer going around and doing other live streams for events like CultureCon, which is also here in Madison, a little plug for them, coming in August. But a lot of it started back with helping Social Media Breakfast get some of their first live events going. And I've been live streaming since 2011, back before when Twitch was still Justin TV back in the day, and it was a lot more complicated to just get on any sort of live video online. But to kind of kick things off, I want to know who here has gone live before. Leave a yes or no in the chat as well. Okay, we have a small handful. There's still some who haven't. Okay, good to know. And I do, just for those of you in the chat, I like to see coming in. I'm getting to see where they're all from. We got some Fitchburgs. We got some Appleton, La Crosse. But I do have the iPad up here, so if you are online and you have a question, a comment, a reaction, feel free to leave that in there. I'm going to be monitoring that as well. And I would like to ask this question right away at the start, just because this is kind of a big topic. You know, it covers all aspects of video production, plus it covers topics of content creation, and then there's just all the new elements of actually live streaming and being live at the same time. And I want to tailor this to you as much as possible. So if you have a question, any of the in-person people have a question throughout, definitely raise your hand. If you have a question online, definitely let me know. We can kind of adjust this and get to the level of where you all are or where your needs might be. And so I just wanted to look through here. We're getting some answers now from people online that we have some, yep, I've live streamed my drone flights. Others have not gone live yet. And this is kind of the first little tip or secret, the thing to consider when you are live streaming, is that there is always going to be a slight delay. So you noticed I asked the question. Obviously, everybody here in the room was able to respond immediately with raising their hand. But at minimum, somebody who is watching virtually has to type out their answer. They have to find the reaction button. They have to spend a few seconds doing that. But then also when you're live streaming on something like Facebook, you have a solid 20-second delay. A lot of other platforms also have a delay depending on which platform you use. But a great practice is to get used to asking questions right away and then either responding to them yourself, or if you have an in-person audience as well, interacting with the in-person audience. Just give them about 20, 30 seconds to actually respond to that question. So first little tip. This is kind of our little roadmap for the day and what we're gonna be talking about. We'll start just really quickly with the why of streaming. Then we're gonna spend a good amount of time on the basics, and that's gonna cover a lot of our gear, software, stuff like that. We'll talk a little bit about designing for engagement, using live stream as the foundation for your content strategy, and what to do when things go wrong, because it's live and things always go wrong. Somebody might step on a cable even, you know.
It's gonna happen.
All right, so let's talk a little bit about the why of streaming. One of the big things is just the increased connection you can create with your audience and that increased community. They're able to experience something with you, right along with you. And that's something that recorded video and other things just can't quite provide. So it's a great way to have that interaction with people. It's a great way to build that connection with your community. Being live also really helps with create dynamic content, because you're able to adjust it on the fly based off of questions that people are sending you, based off of things people want to learn more. You're going to be able to have that dynamic way of creating your content to make it, again, a little bit more engaging and really dial in your training or your education pieces or even some of your entertainment. If you want to dial that into what people are resonating with, you're able to do that with live. And this is what we're going to talk about even more later, go farther down the rabbit hole in, but it's a really great way to create a foundation for your content strategy. Live streaming can be that hub that everything else kind of grows from, and help make creating content easier for everybody. Because I'm sure all of you as marketers have fallen down that hamster wheel of trying to keep up with all the content that your organizations need to create. It can be difficult, and using live streaming as a foundation can really help you do just that. There's also just a wide variety of use cases. Everything from the weekly shows to the in-moment interactions to the personal connections. There's a big wide variety of use cases you can use it and different strategies you can use with your live streaming. So I recommend you definitely think about some of those, and it just provides that flexibility like a lot of other things can. And this is one, it is transferable. And what do I mean by transferable? I wasn't sure. I was worried about that. All right, hold on. There we go. I wasn't sure quite how to say this, so this is the word I'm using, transferable. But who in here has to sit on Zoom meetings ever? Yep. Who here records video? Yeah. Your live streaming setup can help support that. It can help take your Zoom meetings, your Zoom presentations, your team meetings, help you look better, look more professional, take that to a next level. If you are recording videos, it can help speed up that content creation, because when you have a solid live streaming setup, whether it's a permanent setup or it's something you have to set up, when you have the gear and equipment and know what you're doing, you can create that content way quicker than if you don't have that setup thought about ahead of time. And so one thing I want you to think about at least is if you have the ability to create a little permanent setup in your space, at your office or at your home, where you can have that little studio or that meeting space. It could be as simple as setting it up on your desk, your office desk, getting a ring light and having it there and ready to go whenever you need to create that content. So we're going to dive a little bit more into that, but just as we're going through some of the presentation, think about how you can smooth out the process of your setup for your streaming. So let's talk a little bit about the basics. And this is going to get into some of the equipment and the software. And this is where it can get very nerdy very quickly. And I kind of designed this to be a little bit more high level, but if you're interested, we can definitely go down that rabbit hole and talk more about all the gear and all the options and things like that. So definitely keep your questions coming. So let's first start with the platform. Nowadays, there are a lot of different options of where you can go live. And ultimately, you want to pick the one that fits best with your content strategy. You want to kind of think about this a little holistically and where it makes the most sense. And just from the pure marketing side, we're talking about things like Instagram, Twitch, Facebook, LinkedIn, YouTube. There's many other ones popping out all over the place nowadays too, so that you have a lot of options of where you can go live. They all have their different advantages, to be honest with you. So this is a moment for you to kind of evaluate your current content creation strategy, evaluate where your audiences are, and really think about what some of the pros and cons of both of those, of where to go live are, and then make your decision off of that. If you are, and really the ones I mentioned, these are just the kind of free educational or marketing type of platforms. If you're putting on paid events or you want to create paid content, that kind of goes down a whole different realm where there's a lot of other options in terms of the platform. So you do have a lot of flexibility out there. And it's, like I mentioned, it's a little bit of a case-by-case basis of which is best for you, but I'm happy to talk about that a little bit more if you want to. And if you're just getting started and want some place to kind of jump off from, I'm a big fan of YouTube. We're going to be talking about it a bunch here throughout, but that's my platform of choice if you are just starting to grow, just starting to take off or get something started when it comes to live video. Few reasons. One, on Instagram, a Facebook, Twitch even, any of those things, your video has a relatively short lifespan. Facebook videos probably not getting a lot of views after 7 days. That's probably even pushing it, to be honest. Whereas YouTube is constantly going to have the ability to generate views and generate an audience. There's just also a lot of other ways you can repurpose, and we'll get into some of that a little bit later. But if you're just starting out, highly recommend you think about YouTube. The other kind of big thing you want to think about is building in some sort of consistency. Now, again, this is going to depend a lot on your actual strategy, what you want to use, what makes sense for you, but I am going to recommend trying to create some sort of weekly show. Something that you can jump in consistently, show up every single week. Ideally, if you can have the same exact time, that's going to be best, but building in some sort of consistency is going to help drive an audience for you because they're going to know when to show up. Think of it like you're creating your own little TV show. And honestly, that's kind of what we're doing. So that's the way you want to frame it. That's the way you want to think about it and try to show up every single week if possible. Now, what platform do you plan to use? I'm sure some of you have some thoughts going through your mind. If you would, in person, turn to a partner, talk to them, just share what platform you're thinking about using. Online, leave a comment, let me know what platform you're thinking about. All right. It sounds like it's been a little bit of a mix of both of different things for people, which is good to hear. Just overhearing some of the in-person conversations, there's a few different platforms. The online, I know they've been saying Facebook, YouTube, a lot of Facebooks and YouTube and their org website. But again, this is something I want you to think about when you're creating your content, overall content strategy, which platform you want to be on, because you need to make sure you can support at least that platform and you're able to be active there. Now, can you do things like simulcast to multiple platforms? Yes, but that's going to be a little bit more of an advanced strategy because no matter what you're doing, you want to make sure you're able to be engaged with the comments, be engaged with the chat while you're live. So don't jump to being live everywhere if you don't have a way to manage the comments and chat. All right, let's talk a little bit more about the basics. So this is where we're going to get into some of the equipment. So let's jump in. The first thing I want to note is that you can start with your phone. That is probably the spot where many people should get started. You might not have the other gear to really do a decent live stream, but honestly, the phone is almost always going to be a part of your live streaming strategy, especially if you're making it the foundation of your content creation strategy. So get used to going live with the phone. That's a great spot to get started with. And this is going to go into just a tiny little bit of a sidebar, but you want to think of the 1% rule. So every single time you're going live or as you're working on things, you want to find ways that you can improve things by 1%. Don't try to be perfect, multiple camera stream the very first time you're going live. You want to start out slowly and look for little ways to improve your lighting or look for little ways to increase the amount of comments that you're getting or the chat that's happening. You want to continue have that mindset of continuous improvement and improving that one little percent every single time. Now, when it comes to thinking about gear and your overall look and production of your show, I think it's important to do it kind of a smart and strategic way rather than just buying the latest, newest gear and most interesting stuff you're interested in. I can easily and have easily fallen for that, but if you do things right, you can continue to improve without completely blowing your bank account. So I think the first thing is to know what's possible. Know what you want your show to ultimately look like, or at least have an idea. Do you want it to be a talk show style with multiple cameras, interviewees, remote guests? Like, what do you eventually want your show to look like, or at least the direction you want it to go? But then the key thing is to start where you are. If all you have is your phone, awesome. Start there just by holding up your phone. Maybe then move to a tripod so you don't have to have your arms not getting tired the entire time. Start where you are, but look to be that upgrade focused. Look for little ways you can slowly upgrade things. At a certain point, you'll get beyond your current equipment capability. That's when you should buy something new. That's when you should look to upgrade your gear. So let's talk just a little bit about software. Wide variety of options for software nowadays, which is awesome. Few recommendations. If you are running a Mac, I highly recommend the software Ecamm. It is a great live streaming software. It's Mac only, but that's the route I would go if you're on any sort of Apple product and looking to upgrade your live streaming. If you're on a PC, check out vMix. This is something that this software right here actually is vMix. It's a switching software that we use all the time for clients. Like, that's what I use whenever I'm working with a client. It is a paid software. They have a really great free trial, like 60 days. You can try it out, test it out. Highly recommend checking them out. It's going to basically allow you to do anything you absolutely want to do. Like, takes a while to figure it out and get things up and running, but you can start out, again, basic and slowly upgrade from there. If your computer is not powerful enough for some reason, doesn't have a decent CPU, GPU, then you can look to a browser-based option. One of the most popular out there is StreamYard. They have gotten way better, and all the browser-based softwares have gotten way better in terms of what's required to run them, the internet that you need, and just the interfaces that they have. Back in the day, it used to be a thing where they would crash all the time. So I generally would recommend people stay away from browser-based, but to be honest, nowadays, they're pretty good. Or you can jump into the native experience. So if you're on Facebook, right now we're using the native experience to deliver that stream. YouTube, all of the major platforms have some sort of native integration where you can just go stream right from your browser in that software. So before I really go crazy, what questions do we have around platforms?
Just to be sure I understand native experience, what do you mean by that?
So if you go to facebook.com, and you can go in there and click live. And so you can go directly live from the website. And so even your apps on your phone, YouTube, the same way, you can go directly to that website. You don't need any additional software. So like Ecamm, vMix, those are additional softwares. There are applications that live on your computer that allow you to add multiple inputs, multiple cameras, graphics, things like that. That's probably a next level if you are purely just getting started. I wouldn't even necessarily worry about that yet. First, get your first few lives out of the way through that native experience.
And Ecamm costs as well?
It does, but again, has a free trial as well too. Yeah.
So then what's the conduit that connects between this software and your audience? How do you actually deliver to them? How do they connect with?
So he was asking how do you connect the software, like an Ecamm, with the actual platform that you're going live on, like YouTube. So a lot of them, like Ecamm, for example, has a special little, you flip the switch to say you want to go live on Facebook, and you enter your information, they'll make that connection automatically. Otherwise, if you're using some other things, you will grab RTMP code, essentially. So it's the URL and then a special little key that you use to make that integration. Yeah?
I'm surprised that you said YouTube as like a place to try first. What's kind
So the question was that she was surprised that YouTube was one of the platforms I'd recommend to try first versus Facebook or Instagram. Honestly, the biggest thing is the YouTube piece. On YouTube, that live stream will live. It'll continue. Like, I have live streams from 3 years ago that are still getting consistent, pretty regular views. Obviously, it's dipped off some, but they will still get views. And then when you approach it in a certain way, there are ways you can easily trim things down on YouTube. There are ways you can get a little extra juice out of that video, out of that stream. Whereas with, say, Facebook, it dies pretty quickly. And Instagram, I think I can't remember off the top of my head how long those live streams stay up, but they're almost immediate, 24 hours. That's what I thought. Yeah. Yes.
So on a similar note, if you're using YouTube, how important is that consistency you mentioned in terms of frequency and timing? Because, like, I never watch a TV show at the time it comes out. I only stream TV and watch it, when I want to. So why does it matter, or how much does it matter that you're picking a consistent time to go live if you're using something like YouTube?
Yeah, so the question was, how much does consistency actually matter, especially when it comes to like time, day and time, in order to get your audience? So it will help, is kind of the best way to say it. Do you have to go live every single week at the exact same time on the exact same day? No. With any sort of social media platform, it does help to have some sort of consistency in terms of posting. But you need to do what works for you, because we're not always going to be able to go live every single week at the exact same time. We're not always going to be able to release that content on the same day. That's just a fact of life. But the more you can build that consistency, the more actual live viewers you're going to get. So in terms of the long range, probably is not going to make a huge difference, as long, again, as you are producing content on a regular basis, say once a week. It's the short range effect. Like, you'll have people who will know that you are live, they like interacting in the chat, they like being a part of the environment, so they're going to show up in time to be a part of that experience. So that's the piece that you might lose, is the actual live viewers versus the long run. So long run probably doesn't matter that much, but in the moment, the more consistency you can build, the better. All right, wanted to quick scroll through the chat here. I see you got some stuff about Stream Deck. I will definitely touch on that later. Yep, and Joe was just saying, agreed that day and time helps. I follow Pilot Institute and look forward to their drone news about noon every Friday. So that's kind of a normal experience for a lot of people. All right, with the platform talk done, let's talk sound. So audio is going to be one of your most important elements. We all like to think about video first, or at least I do, but really audio is going to be kind of that linchpin. You need to have good audio, otherwise the experience is going to tank for your users, for your audience. I would highly recommend moving away from your internal microphone on your computer as soon as possible. You can buy relatively cheap USB microphones if that's the concern, but I would highly recommend moving away from that internal mic as soon as you can. And we'll talk about a couple options in a bit. You also want to really work on creating the right space. A big open room that's hardwood floors, lots of lighting, lots of great windows. Love it, would love to live there, but it's not necessarily great for your live stream or your video production, because that sound is going to bounce everywhere. So you want to think, if that is the situation you have, what little steps can you do to soundproof the room or to help eliminate that echo? One thing, or just that extra space. One thing you can do is as simple as moving the mic closer. The further the mic is away, the more extra noise it's going to kind of pick up, or the more gain you're going to have to turn up to get that to hear that volume or to get that to the appropriate volume. The closer you can get to the mic to, the more gain you can turn down, then the higher quality the sound is going to be. That's just a thing. That's why all podcasters have the mic right in their face. That's what it's there for. Other things you can do, blankets, the more rugs, the more soft things you have in the room, the better. I'm not going to say you have to go live streaming from your closet, but it's honestly not a bad idea if you're worried about audio. A cheap way to improve that if you're creating something a little more permanent, moving blankets work really well. They do make specialty sound blankets, which are even a little thicker and do a little bit more, but even a simple moving blanket will do a really nice job at helping improve that sound quality. All right, let's talk about mic options. There are a lot of them out there nowadays, so you can kind of find your budget and find a good option from there. There are USB mics that have gotten really good. I'm a big fan of Rode, what they're doing nowadays. So any of their line of mics, if you're looking to even go to the next level in terms of your audio production, they have things like the Rodecaster Pro 2. We have a few of them. They work really well. But even nowadays, there are things like the Streamer X or the X Streamer. I always forget how they name it. But that can serve as your video capture and single audio in. So if it's just you all the time on your live stream, that's a great option to get some really high quality at a relatively easy cost. Elgato also has a really great line of streaming products. So that's, I think Joe mentioned the Stream Deck. Elgato also the makers of the Stream Deck. That's kind of a nice little accessory for Zoom production. So in your software, you can touch some buttons and make things happen on your computer. We're probably not going to dive into that today unless there's a lot of people who want to talk about it. But in Elgato's entire line, they're really focused on streaming. A little more on the gaming side of it, but in terms of content creation or anything else like that, excellent site to look at. So let's briefly talk about lighting. Lighting is second or third in our gear line equipment talk for a reason, because lighting can drastically improve the look of your video. If you can improve your lighting, you're going to improve. You don't necessarily need to upgrade your cameras. There are amazing cameras that can look really crappy if lit wrong, and your iPhone can look amazing when you have great lighting. It could be as simple as a little ring light as a nice little option to improve the quality of your lighting. I personally am a big fan of Aperture, so that's this company. And their line of products, again, Elgato has a great one, but even if you are just at your desk, there are little panels of light, MCs. Is it MT? MC. Too many acronyms and all these different names. But those lights, small little light, I want to say around, the single one might be around $90, maybe less than that. It's under 100 for sure. But that could be a great thing to save up for and just have a little light panel you can set at a 45-degree angle when you're going live and things like that, just to create that nice little lighting effect. Again, there are people whose entire career is built on lighting, so that's a lot more than we can probably cover today. But look for little ways, check out some YouTube videos. This would be the next thing I would look to improve is your lighting. First audio, then lighting, because lighting makes everything better. Now we can talk about video and just the different video cameras and the ways you can get started. I highly recommend, if you're just getting started, look at using your phone. Lots of great ways, and you can bring it into your computer in different ways as well. If you are an Apple person, the continuity camera with the iPhone works really well. So that basically allows you to use the back lenses on your phone as a webcam. There are all kinds of other softwares if you're running Android or a PC to make the same exact thing happen. But that's a really great way to improve your lighting with a camera you already have. And the reason I say that is because most likely you probably don't have a really great built-in webcam if you're using a laptop. They're kind of junky. So the sooner we can improve that video quality, the better. But again, jumping to your phone is a great little way to do that. And then you're looking at things like webcams. Again, we had an explosion of different options. Elgato, I really enjoy their webcam if you're looking for one. Logitech also has a great little line of webcams. And then you can bump up to using actual cameras. All the big camera companies now, Sony, Canon, I believe Nikon has one, and Panasonic. You can use their newer line of cameras simply by plugging in a USB-C cable into your computer and use it as a webcam. It's only going to get you 720 video, but for the vast majority, that'll be a big improvement over what you're currently using or the way the video actually looks currently. Then looking at things like capture cards. So what a capture card is, a little device, actually we have one here that it's Elgato's Cam Link, there we go, that's the word. But what that does is allows you to take your HDMI from your camera and bring it into your computer. Because what you can't do is say plug your HDMI directly into the HDMI port on your computer. Those are not capture cards, those are send video signal. So you need something that takes video signal and brings it into your computer. That's what a capture card does. The Rode Streamer X has a built-in one. So if you are thinking about going that route, again, recommend checking that out. That's going to drastically improve your video production. Now we could also talk about all kinds of other cameras, things like PTZs. So we have a few of them here in the room. Those are basically, for the online, those are basically robotic cameras that allow you to move and control and create all kinds of presets and move the shot around the room. It's how, say, at a big in-person event where we have 500 people in the audience and somebody up on stage speaking, I'm able to follow them with 2 different cameras and be a single person back there without needing actual camera operators. So if that's your scenario, that's another option as well. And then let's talk a little bit just about production value. And that covers kind of a wide range of things, but it's stuff like thinking about your background. What is behind you? How do you have things set up? And wanting to make that look intentional at least, and ideally look for different ways to improve it. It's not to say that a solid color background behind you is not going to look good, but it's being intentional about those and finding different ways to create that background in that scenario. And then you're going to be going into things like graphics. What can you do to add a little spice to your stream, whether it's lower thirds, whether it's a countdown timer and some moving animations, stuff like that. And then from there, with your production value, we're going to be talking a little bit about actually going in and creating B-roll for things. This is a great way a relatively simple way to add a whole lot of production value to your stream. So an example of something you can do for one of our events, it's a big event in DC called GAC. We have a lot of, imagine almost ESPN game day type scenario where we're bringing people in, doing interviews with them. A great little thing you can do is create an intro clip out of, say, video of that person up on stage talking and splice together a nice little clip in order to play during their introduction. As you're talking about who that person is, have visuals on screen kind of showcasing that. You can also do product shots if you're reviewing stuff, have some way of adding that video into your live stream. Kind of along the same lines as adding, say, that second camera angle and adding increased camera angles in order to create, again, what you're essentially doing is trying to create a more dynamic stream that will bring people in, keep them engaged. And then just thinking of your overall branding. All right, we ran through a lot of that stuff pretty quickly. Is there any questions around some of the gear or things like that? Yeah.
Can you talk, in my experience, there's a whole lot of, you need to build in a whole lot of prep time for a live shoot. Like you have to, as in, if my live shoot goes on at 5 and I have somebody who's a guest, I'll want to like start going at 3:30 or 4 to make sure they get online. Can you talk about the pre-game stuff that you do before the live?
Yeah, absolutely. So the question was around kind of the pregame before going live and what you should be doing. Actually, I'm going to jump on that in a little bit. I got something that's kind of tangentially related, so let's keep on moving. And we'll touch on that in a second. What you're going to, kind of our next big key element here is to really design for engagement. So it's going to be really important that you provide great content for your audience. That's ultimately what people are showing up for. So you don't want to get too lost in just trying to have conversations with the chat. You want to make sure you incorporate it in a really strategic way. Because especially as someone starting out, you're likely not going to have a lot of questions from chat and from different people. Your audience is likely not going to show up initially. So if you think about the way you are structuring your show flow, that's going to improve the quality of your streams. That's going to ultimately improve the engagement that you're going to get with those streams as well. So what I mean by show flow is essentially your outline for your presentation, your outline for your content. Just like you would if you're standing up giving a speech, you want to have some sort of outline for your live video. But remember that the really great value of being live is that you get to have those interactions and that engagement with the audience. So you want to intentionally build that in. So I would recommend building that in from the start as much as possible. Faith drops in the chat right away for people to say, where are you watching from? As kind of a quick little conversation starter, a way to kind of get the audience going. You can have that as the first thing you do as well, either in some sort of pre-show slide or something like that. You want to have something where you get the audience answering a quick question up front. And then really think about ways you can build that engagement in throughout your presentation. What are other questions you can ask? What are other things you can do? And just continue to kind of make that a practice. Now, when you're asking questions, think at least, especially early on, easy one-word answers. Yes, no, where are you watching from, is a quick little answer. Think about ways you can have some easy one-word answers in the beginning, and then you can get into more involved answers as the stream goes on. There's also a great option to play some trivia. There's lots of good software out there, things like Slido, where you can have poll interactions and trivia going all at the same time. So I think that's a great thing to do. And just again, kind of thinking about how you can seed that engagement throughout your video. And I do want to talk a little bit about being sure to pause for that engagement time to happen. So the way I like to kind of structure a show flow, and this is where we're going to get to a little bit about the prep, is like this. There are lots of different ways you can do it, but this is kind of my best practice recommendation, is to have a little bit of a pre-show, and that could be with a countdown timer up, it could be with a graphic, depending a little bit on how you're setting up your stream and if you're using extra software or just the native software, but have some sort of pre-show that is 2, 3, maybe 5 minutes long, depending on how engaged your audience is. And during that time, that's purely when you're trying to engage with your audience. You're asking them, where are you watching from? What's the weather like? What did you do this weekend? Those types of questions. It could be a little bit more topical as you go on, but something to kind of get them engaged, get them talking. You're looking down and you're noticing that you're getting a new comment from Joe with thoughts on wall felts, or things like that. Like you're recognizing who's saying hi, who's appearing in the chat, and how things are going. When that countdown timer ends, that's when you jump into content creation mode. And your very first thing should be that hook experience, like you would for a normal video. Tell them what you're going to be talking about, tease that out. Then at that point, you give your hook and your quick little introduction. And then at that point, you could have, say, another question for the audience, a simple one-word answer type question, because a lot of people won't be paying attention until the countdown timer runs out. But then after you do a quick, simple question, then you jump in to your first content section. So say you're talking about the 3 best USB microphones. Well, you jump in and talk about microphone number 1. Deliver that without probably looking at the chat or very minimally looking at the chat. So create great content for that first section. After you wrap that up, pause, check out the chat. Maybe you ask them another sort of question at the end of that piece. Spend a minute or 2, depending on how engaged people are, what's going on, looking at the chat, going through that. Then jump into your talk about microphone number 2, your second content section. Pause after that. You kind of see the pattern. Create that pattern through your content so that you're creating great value for anyone who watches the replay. You're creating great value content-wise without getting too distracted, but you're still having that engagement piece. Once you're done with all of your content sections, then I'd go into kind of the general Q&A. Depending on how long you want your stream to go, you could be just going through, making sure you're catching up on any questions that might have been missed, but really going through that. After you do that, end with a solid call to action. And it could be, be sure to tune in next week. It could be any sort of thing, but be sure to have some sort of, I like to end on a solid outro call to action type piece. On YouTube, a great thing to do would be to throw them into another video. Say you talked about microphones that for the video, well then likely the next thing they're going to want to think about is audio interfaces. So throw them over to a video about audio interfaces or about cameras or something like that, something related. But that's a great way to keep that watch time up as well. All right, any questions? Yes?
I have a question going back to lighting. We do a lot of lives with like 2 or 3 people as a panel. How do you light that and make it look good?
Yeah, so the question was around lighting for multiple people on, say, a panel or an interview piece, and on how do you light that well. It can definitely be tricky. One, on the very basic level, if you can find more natural light to bring in, that could be a great way to have people face the window so that they get that natural light. And again, that's kind of the cheap, easy way. Otherwise, you're looking at adding more lights, most likely, or a bigger light that then, say, you bounce off the ceiling to kind of fill in that entire space. Because think of the ceiling, especially if it's white, is generally a big reflector. So that's how we'll light up backgrounds on a lot of stuff, is if we want to kind of cover this whole area in light and make sure people can easily see the background, point the light directly at the ceiling, crank it up, and it kind of fills in that entire space. So that's kind of the really quick version of ways to think about it. Otherwise, you're looking at how can you add some sort of key light basically for every person, which can be tricky, can definitely be done. But again, you're looking at probably, you have 3 people, you're probably looking at least 3 lights. You can kind of double up sometimes depending on the layout. But yeah. All right. Oh, and thanks Joe, just for recognizing the good tip is to repeat the question if you're doing something like in person and live at the same time and don't have microphone runners going all around. So yeah, that was kind of this section. I do want to get into a couple other things kind of really quickly here at the end. Foundation for your content strategy. I think live streaming can be that really great foundational element for your content strategy. Because a little bit of what we've been talking about, especially creating that show flow like we mentioned, it's going to really, you can use it in a lot of different ways. One of those specifically is for video podcasting. YouTube is leaning heavily into the podcasting world right now. So now is the time, if you have a podcast, really consider adding a video element and putting it on YouTube. You could even consider not adding the video element and still putting it on YouTube with a graphic, and they are just leaning very heavily in this. So you're going to be seeing kind of increased reach around that. So that's one way you can kind of repurpose your live stream, and what I would do is take out the intro piece, and if you have a lot of different engagement pieces, take those out, edit it down so that it is pure content. Again, it depends a little bit on what your engagement pieces were in that, if you decide to leave them in or not. But what you don't necessarily want to have is a lot of just random chatter of welcoming people in the chat during the pre-show or taking questions afterwards in your podcast. But I'd highly recommend creating a video podcast and looking at that. Yes?
I have 2 podcasts, and they're both separate from my primary brand. If I was going to, I don't put my podcast on YouTube, although I know that they're really into it right now. Would you recommend having a standalone channel for each podcast, or can they both live in a general grandparent brand where the podcast goes out under the Reverbal Communications brand instead of it having to be a full-on Step Up Your Social branded page? Because then I've got all these pages to manage, the skills overwhelming.
Yeah, I definitely think you can get away with it as long as the audience. Thank you. So his question was around having multiple channels or multiple podcasts, wondering if he needs to create 2 separate YouTube channels or if they could all live under a big overall umbrella channel, basically, correct?
Yeah.
The audience depends, it's a little bit dependent on the audience, to be honest. If, say, the demographics all kind of fit under that umbrella channel, then yeah, I would say you could lean into that for sure. Because essentially what you're doing with a podcast on YouTube is you are actually basically just creating a playlist. And those would live together. So you'd have a playlist for podcast A and a playlist for podcast B. The only thing where it gets maybe a little tricky is if it's, say, 2 completely different audiences, then you're probably going to want to separate those just because the algorithm will get confused a little bit.
Can I ask one more question?
Yeah, sure.
So I've got dozens of episodes of one of them. Should I just start throwing up one a day, or should I space it out, or should I just start going forward and not backwards?
I probably would put them on there. I would not upload them all right away, probably. I would probably space it out. I would probably space it out by 2-3 days. Get them up there, get it caught up, and then your regular cadence going forward.
Cool. That's helpful.
Yeah. Yes.
So for these podcastings, are you normally expected to get a media waiver from your guests, a formal media waiver, or is it just assumed that it's okay to broadcast them?
So the question is around media waivers for your podcast or for, well, let's just say video in general or anything in general. That is entirely dependent on your organization, your company, and what you're comfortable with, probably. If it's a personal brand, there's say if I was bringing someone onto my YouTube channel, I would have clearly communicated, I want you to come on my channel. Let's do this interview. I assume that you responding and saying yes. I'm also not a lawyer in any capacity.
I was waiting for that.
But yeah, so it's going to definitely depend on your organization. I would check with your legal department, honestly, because most likely you probably will want some sort of umbrella company, especially if you are making, or umbrella waiver policy, especially if you are making money off of any of this. So, which if you are, say, just because we're talking about YouTube, if you are a YouTube partner, you are making money off of your YouTube channel. So, all right, let's jump forward a little bit and just a couple other quick ways you can repurpose. Audio podcasts, obviously. Another great thing you can do is actually clipping out shorts. So this is something you can do directly from your live stream, clip those shorts out, and it will link back to your actual video. So if someone wants to see the longer video, they're able to do just that. So another really great way to repurpose. Obviously, that linking back to the direct video is, again, very YouTube focused, but you can clip out great elements of your live stream and use them across all your social media channels. So it can, again, kind of be that foundation for a lot of social media content. There's obviously things you can do like transcribing, getting your transcript and using that as a way to build your email newsletter. I wouldn't, throw the whole transcript in the email newsletter, but you can use elements of it, use it as a basis for writing. I I'm a person who always struggles to write words. So being able to jump on a video, jump on a mic, talk it out, that's going to be a great way for me, for example, to get started with an email newsletter, a blog post, any sort of written type of word. And then I did also want to throw in just the phone again. I do think this should be kind of an element of your overall strategy. So the way you would use this in, say, this scenario is use it as a promotional element for your live stream, for getting people back to that video. And that's where you'd bring in, say, a second channel, say like an Instagram or something like that, or LinkedIn, or going live somewhere else where to add in that auxiliary social media network. All right, we're running out of time, but I only have a couple little things here that I want to talk about when things go wrong. So I knew it would be crunch for time, so I did just put it on a big list. Some keys to remember is just to try to stay as calm as you can. That's a great guiding principle. And remember that your job ultimately is to deliver the content. If you have some sort of small issue, probably don't even necessarily acknowledge it, honestly. Most of the time people are, if they notice, it's not a big deal. I see way too often people apologizing for a small little hiccup or something. Fix it and just keep moving if it's a tiny issue. If it's definitely a noticeable issue, feel free to call it out. If it's, the screen getting unplugged, kind of call it out, fix it, and move on. You don't need to keep.
Don't notice that?
Yeah. Yes, I think people notice that one. But again, fix it and keep moving forward. And it's going to depend a little bit on your type of scenario. If you take breaks in your stream or your event, you might be able to fix it on a break, something like that. But fix it, move forward. If it's a really big issue, it might be restarting the stream, restarting the computer. Those are, this trusted standby of IT. Just restart everything and it'll work again.
Ron DeSantis' presidential campaign had to be reset and started over on Twitter Spaces. It happened.
Yes. Some preventative things to think about. Restart your computer before your stream. That's a great way to kind of make sure everything's refreshed. Close down any extra applications. Be very wary of any sort of backup device, like if you have any sort of cloud backups running, Dropbox, Backblaze, anything like that, be sure to shut that down because that's going to use up your bandwidth. Ideally hardwire to your internet, or if you can, or just be sure to boost your internet speed. We didn't really cover that, I'm realizing. Kind of the baseline, 5 Mbps up. So I don't care as much what your download speed is. Lots of companies will tell you their download speeds, or internet service providers will tell you their download speeds. You want to ask about your upload speeds, and obviously the more you can get, the better. But if it's under 5, you're probably going to struggle a little bit, so you might have to go to like your phone, for example, or something else like that. And create a checklist for yourself. And speaking of checklists, if you would like one, you can head on over to nickpalkowski.com/checklist and grab that. I'm also a big fan of, this is a Latin word called premeditatiorum. Horrible at pronouncing it, but I like the concept. And basically what it translates to is the premeditation of evils. So especially in my day job, where the entire thing is live production, it's thinking about ahead of time what can go wrong, what might be the hiccups, and how do we solve for that, and how do we prevent that? Because it's one of those things that basically the more you can be prepared up front, ultimately the better experience you're going to have. So I know we ran through that last part a little bit quick, but I really want to encourage all of you to just get started. Again, start with the phone, start where you're at, but go live. Give it a chance, check it out, and just keep moving forward. And be sure to connect with me if you have any other questions. My website, nickpalkowski.com, or you can check out the YouTube channel. But I'll definitely look forward to connecting with all of you, both in person and virtually.
Hell yeah. So we've got time for just a couple more questions, but I just want to say you could tell Nick's a pro. A, he repeated all the questions on his own, which is Very impressive, but also he was literally following the live stream, which I've never seen anybody do. So you can tell he does this for a living. He's obviously a great resource. I have a ton of questions, but I'm not going to ask any more, assuming other folks do. So yeah, let's turn it over.
Yeah, for your full-time job, Nick, can you tell us about how do you get the guests, the talent for the show that you do, your weekly shows, that type of thing? Are they coming forward to you, or is it something you have to really recruit? Because that seems to be an issue in a lot of organizations. People don't want to come on, they don't really realize they have something good to talk about. So how does that work in your organization?
So the question is around getting guests, getting talent to be a part of your streams or be a part of what you're creating, correct?
Yes.
So I'm lucky in terms of the full-time job. That's not a huge issue because we are, at least my department is the content creation side of things. We're the educational arm for credit unions. So we're bringing in speakers all the time. We're looking for speakers. But in my past experience, it is, yes, a lot of reaching out and connecting. I wish I had a better answer for you around this, but it is building those relationships with people, talking to them, and sometimes a lot of the hesitation or the reason people aren't following up is because they're nervous about being on camera or they're nervous about that environment. So the more you can make it just a simple little conversation, a simple element where they just have to show up and not worry as much, they can talk directly to you and not have to worry about the camera, and kind of let them know ahead of time or even send them some examples of what you create, give them an idea, or if you don't have anything yet, talk to them about that kind of stuff ahead of time, or even if you can get on a pre-call and actually go through, these are some of the questions I'm going to ask you, or this is the direction I want to take things. I'd love to hear this story from you, and we can take it very, very simple, preparing people as much as possible generally helps with that. All right. Yes?
You mentioned the transcript being a tool to move to an email newsletter. The softwares that you mentioned, do those automatically transcribe video, or do you have a recommendation for a tool for that?
So most of them are going to have some sort of basic automatic transcription or in them. If you're using, like, say, even an editing software like Adobe Premiere, that also has one kind of built in. If you do want to get a higher quality version, something that's not AI based, I do recommend rev.com, still a really great one. There's different levels there. That is, again, a paid service, so you will have, the quality generally means you're paying a little bit more for it. All right, let's take, at least, I saw there's a few online. All right.
You had talked about some streams, and I don't know if it's software, but having like that time clock beforehand, before that live stream, or graphics to play before you're starting that live stream. Are there graphics or templates that are already built into some softwares, or where would you track those from?
Yes, so there definitely are. Ecamm has kind of some built-in ones. vMix has some basic built-in ones as well. A lot of your browser-based ones are going to have some sort of element like that. Other things you can also do is you can definitely go find templates out there for it. A lot of the ones that I've been using, I created, just using After Effects and creating essentially a transparent overlay layer. And again, it can be transparent, doesn't have to be, can be anything like that. That's one nice thing with a lot of this is you get to have almost complete freedom around it too. But yeah, Sunduck has a lot of really great, I think it's sunduck.com. I'd have to look, but I can send out that resource later. But they have a lot of great templates, or Motion Array has a lot of great templates as well.
Could you talk briefly about going live on more than one platform at a time? And specifically, well, not specifically, but also, have you ever done TikTok and or Instagram Live? I think think those are a lot harder, right? Like the softwares don't do that, like the
Right.
API is not open to it, so maybe it's not possible, or you just use 2 cameras, how do you do that?
So the question is around streaming on multiple platforms or simulcasting, and then also on like TikTok, Instagram specifically. Let's simulcasting. Let's jump to that first. A lot of the softwares will have something. So an Ecamm, a vMix have something built in that will allow you to go live on multiple different platforms. So it's definitely a possibility. A lot of times, depending on, this gets a little more in the weeds, but depending on how they do this, so for Ecamm, they send one out to the cloud, and then from the cloud, it spreads it out everywhere else. vMix, you are essentially sending 3 different streams from your computer out in kind of the basic way of explaining it. So that means you need higher internet bandwidth for a vMix type of a stream when doing that, when simulcasting. The key there, though, is you want to make sure that you are able to follow and watch the comments in the chat on all of that. So again, luckily, like an Ecamm, a vMix, you have the ability to connect to those platforms that you're going live on and see the comments come across your screen. A lot of the browser-based ones also do that, so you can see the comments. The other nice thing is that, say, I'd be able to put Joe's comment across the screen so everybody can see his entire comment. You wouldn't have to necessarily repeat it. You could just throw that up, answer the question, or engage with it that way. So I do really like that feature if you're purely on the social media side of things. When you're doing more of the paid stuff, simulcasting gets a little bit more tricky for some reason, but yeah. And then in terms of Instagram and TikTok, at least at one point, I think they fixed this now, and I haven't done it in a while. There was a little hack to get live directly on Instagram, like simulcast on Instagram. It is definitely not in their terms of service, though, so I wouldn't recommend that. But honestly, the best thing is to really set up your phone, a second phone. Yeah. I wish there was a better way, but honestly, there's really not. Yeah.
Did I miss hearing you say anything about live streaming through LinkedIn?
I didn't mention it specifically. All same stuff really applies on LinkedIn. It's still kind of rolling out to a lot of people I know. So there's still a lot who don't have access to it, but it's a great platform as well. And yeah, if that's where your audience is, I would recommend going live there. Again, really when we're thinking platforms, it's thinking about where your audience currently is going to be ultimately the best place to probably go live. I recommend YouTube if you're just starting fresh and don't really have a huge audience anywhere. But yeah. Faith, any live questions or virtual questions? My iPad died.
Cross-platform short on Instagram, TikTok with a link to YouTube?
You could do that. Honestly, it's probably not going to drive a ton of traffic because not a lot of people are clicking links, but it's probably not a bad idea to hopefully increase that views on your main stream.
We're going to call it just for time because obviously we could go all day, but this was awesome. Thank you so much. So good to see you. And keep in touch with Nick. He's an expert, he's a master, and we really appreciate having him as part of our community. So thank you all. If you have not joined our social media breakfast Madison Masterminds, do that today on Facebook. And we do this third Wednesday of the month. We'll be back. So mark your calendars, third Wednesday of the month. See you all next month with, we'll be talking about LinkedIn more in depth. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
I think we could have gone for another hour. So we'll just call it. No, that was awesome.
It's one of the things with this is like there's so many